Right, that's John's last slide there, Psalm 119, God's word is true from the beginning. But there are lots of places that would deny that. And one of them is the British Museum of Natural History, and they have a big display called Human Evolution because they don't believe that human beings were made in the image of God, and they don't believe that we were descended from Adam. And as you go into this display, they have this big wall with a whole lot of skulls. Now, notice some of them have lots of white bits in them. Those are the bits that they didn't dig up, they didn't find. So they are being honest about what they actually found and what they didn't. And they believe that all of these skulls are somehow physically related. And some of them are obviously apes and some of them are people. And they try to say, well, some of them are in between, because this is the standard story of how people came to be many years ago, millions of years ago in their minds. There were apes who turned into ape men, who turned into primitive people, who then turned into modern people. Now, we have apes and we have modern people. As for these so-called ape men, we only have those in fragmentary pieces, and they are interpreted as ape men because we don't have any living ones. That's an idea that has been imposed on some bones that they have dug up. But we do have apes and we do have modern people. So it is worth having a little bit of a comparison between apes and people. Now, we won't go into all of the biological details, but here are a few interesting ones. Human beings are unique for many things, but two of them are that we walk upright on two legs. Our whole body is designed to stand on two legs and to walk on two legs, and we talk to each other and we talk to God. So walking and talking, very much human characteristics. But what about apes? Well, here are some apes, and they can walk on two legs for short periods of time. And if they have something to hang on to with their arms, but they are not designed to walk on two legs. And if you just look at their body proportions there, you can see that their arms are actually much longer than their legs. And their legs are quite short, so their center of gravity is fairly high in their body when they're trying to stand upright like that. So they're not really stably designed to walk on two legs for very long. Whereas human beings are designed, we have longer legs and we have arms, and our center of gravity is somewhere down in the pelvis. So we're well designed for being upright, for standing, and for walking. Now notice one of the apes there has its hand on the ground, even though it is standing up with its knees bent. And that's another thing. Their knees never fully straighten, whereas ours always do when we're walking and standing. Now notice he's leaning on his hand and it's curled underneath. Apes really are quadrupeds. They are designed to walk on four legs, but not in the way that a dog or a cat or many other quadrupeds walk with their paws flat on the ground. They walk by a method called knuckle walking with their hands. Their feet are flat on the ground. Their fingers are actually curled underneath. And if we have a look at this picture here, you can see the shape of an arm, even though he's not walking here, but you can see the shape of his hand very well. Now notice the fingers are curled underneath. That's how they walk with knuckle walking, but their fingers are strong and robust. They're designed for weight bearing, whereas human beings' hands are designed for manipulating objects. We are designed to create things. But also notice the length of the thumb compared with the size of the fingers. The thumb is offset a long way away from the fingers, which means that it's very difficult for an ape to oppose the fingers. In other words, hold up its hand and just touch the tips of the fingers with the thumb. It can't quite manage to get right down to the little finger because the hand isn't made for that way. It's actually made for weight bearing. They can manipulate objects to a certain degree. After all, they pick fruit and eat it, and they can use simple tools, as it were. They'll pick up sticks and do things with them, but not in the same way that we can. So apes can walk on two legs, but they're not really designed to. They can communicate with one another, but not by speech. Now, why is that? Because the reason is that it takes an awful lot of brains for speech language. Now, they often claim that, well, we found these ape men, these intermediates, these human ancestors, and they're given names like Australopithecus something or other. The most famous one of those was Lucy, but this was one that was more recently dug up. It was it was about 3 years ago, and they found this skull, and it was proclaimed to be a fossil face, actually. And they were trying to make this into being a human ancestor. And they worked out, well, it had a fairly small brain of about 370 cubic centimeters. It had a crest on its head and large protruding jaws. Now, notice it doesn't have a bridge of its nose. The face is sort of almost concave, and it doesn't have a chin. But nevertheless, they proclaimed this thing as being a human ancestor. But what living being, what living creature has all of those features? Well, here is the skull, which has all of those features: a small brain, right? No bridge of the nose, a sort of concave face, no chin. And what sort of creature is this? Well, it's a chimpanzee. So what they found in the, if we go back to that slide there, that they've called Australopithecus, and this is where we get bluffed by big words. Australopithecus means southern ape. So the professional scientists are admitting that this is an ape, but in the popular literature, Australopithecines are usually presented as human ancestors. But in fact, if you look at all of their features, they're fully ape. And here are some other apes, all right, an orangutan, a gorilla, and they have all of those features as well. So we have apes and we have people, but we don't have anything that can honestly be said to be linking up apes and people. They are completely separate kinds. Now, here's an interesting feature that is an interesting sort of difference. Here is a gorilla, and we're looking into its eyes. Now, how easy is it to see its eyes there? You can see them, but notice they don't have any whites around the iris of the eye. That's the coloured part of the eye. That's quite a distinctive feature of human beings. No matter what colour your skin is, right, and what colour your eyes are, a very distinctive feature is that we have the whites of our eyes. And because we use our eyes and our facial expressions, because we don't have much hair all over our faces. Even men with beards still have hairless parts of their face. So eyes and faces are used for communication as well as speech. We are designed to communicate with one another in really complex and subtle ways that apes don't. And so here's a closer view of the gorilla, and you can see they actually have pigmented surroundings to their eyes. Interesting sort of. Now it looks like that he has a big head there, but that's not a head full of brains. That's actually a head full of muscles, because of the way they walk on four legs most of the time. Right, their head hangs down forward, and they need really huge muscles on the back of their head, and that's why they have that crest in the skull that we saw with the pictures of the skulls. Right, we have a big rounded head because our heads are full of brains. We have a big brain, which is 3 or 4 times as big as the chimpanzee brain. And so here is a human skull. It's actually a plastic model, but it is an accurate plastic model to show you the difference between an ape and a human head, right? We have a big brain space. So we have a big round cranial space there. You can see a distinctive bridge in the nose so that we have a flat face that's not concave. And we do have a distinctive chin. So there's quite some significant differences there, just in basic things that everyone can notice. You don't have to be a biologist to notice those things. And we did an interesting experiment a while ago. We actually measured the cranial capacity of various skulls, and one way of illustrating that was to get a jug of water and fill it up to that capacity. And the present-day human average cranial capacity, in other words, how much space you've got to fit in your brain, is about 1,350. So that's a long way from the chimpanzee and a long way from the Australopithecine as well. The reason for that is we need a big brain. We were given a big brain by our Creator because He wanted us to speak to each other. He wanted us to speak to Him. He wanted us to listen to Him. He wanted us to have to communicate with words. So that requires a lot of complicated memory. And just like your computer, if it needs more information in it, you've got to put in more electronic stuff. Well, we have more brain cells. And the reason for that is, of course, that we are made in the image of God. And one of the most distinctive things about God is that He speaks. We read about that in the very first chapter. God spoke and it was. And God said, let us make man in our image. We speak because God speaks, and we are built, our brains and the rest of our bodies are designed for that.